that turned me into a fan and student of Sensei Takehiko Inoue. From a pen
I've been making thumbnails for over 3 years now, and I've run out of new ideas. Fortunately, we live in the 21st century, so I turned to ChatGPT for help. I asked it for a random brief for a thumbnail design in the football niche. The response I got was quite specific. Create a thumbnail for a video discussing the tragic side of Cristiano Ronaldo's life. The thumbnail should have a dark and sad tone to match the video's theme. Also, I have realized that this method has proven to be an excellent way to practice expanding your portfolio, especially if you are a beginner thumbnail designer. First, I found an image of Ronaldo on Getty Images that I thought would work well for this thumbnail.
Collaboration is key for team success. With ClickUp, you can easily manage your team's tasks and timelines.
I've been making thumbnails for over 3 years. Darken it using a soft brush with a 25% flow. I'll paint over areas that are already dark, such as the face and eyebrows. This will help enhance the contrast in the thumbnail. Also, I'll make sure to clip all these adjustment layers to the original. Add some noise reduction. Alright, I think this looks good. Now I'll proceed to smooth out his face a bit. First, I'll duplicate the layer and then go to the camera raw filter to add some noise reduction. Next, I'll add a layer mask to this duplicated layer, invert it, and then carefully paint over the face skin areas. This will make the face appear less crisp and more clean. After that, I'll create a curves adjustment layer and darken it. Using a soft brush with a 25% flow, I'll paint over areas that are already.
Rilla? This is Rolua, one of the top illustrators in Japan. And out of all the Japanese illustrators that I've studied, he had single-handedly used more Photoshop features in one artwork than these other top artists combined. So for this video, I've watched all of Rolua's time-lapse videos and analyzed his Photoshop files in order to uncover the artist's secret techniques, showing you how you can also apply these techniques, as well as who else uses it. Starting with one of Rolua's most used techniques, outer glow. Applying layer styles to your layer with outer glow on these settings makes it so that whenever you paint, an outline automatically forms around your brush strokes. Rolua used this time-saving method, usually for hairs at the back or small strands for that extra bit of detail. Another artist that uses this often is Kei Mochizuki. Instead of drawing the line out and filling it in, you can just block in the colors and the lines will follow. Inner glow. Inner glow is another layer style that Rolua used often, and in a very creative way. Imagine that your layer now has a color hiding underneath it, in this case blue, which can be revealed by using an eraser with pressure opacity. For example, in this time-lapse, inner glow was applied to this white color of the hair. Then, with an opacity eraser, erase the edges to reveal that nice blue inner glow. A really unconventional but innovational way of coloring. Lock transparent pixel. By clicking this button, you can now only paint within the boundary of the shape. Essentially, lock transparent pixel is another alternative to clipping mask and layer mask, where each of them has its own advantages and disadvantages for illustration. Rolua uses this tool here and there for efficiency's sake, but an artist that loves using this tool is Mogun, who might actually like this a little too much. Linear dodge blend mode. There are many ways of adding lights and shadows to your illustration. The way that Rolua chose to do this was by using a blend mode called linear dodge. Rolua uses this blending mode to quickly block in the light. This allowed him to create multiple lighting scenarios swiftly without much effort. Another artist that consistently used this blend mode is Rella, who used linear dodge to add dramatic light to a darker scene. Coloring with curves, definitely my favorite technique in this whole video. A single curve was used to alter the color scheme of the whole illustration. To do this, first, make a curve adjustment on top of everything. Then under this toggle bar that says RGB, select specific colors that you want to affect. Moving the curves up increases that color. Moving it down does the opposite. For example, here he decreased reds in the shadows, increased in midtones, and decreased in highlights. Then increased green in shadows and decreased green in light. And in this other image, he drastically increased reds in midtones while decreasing reds in shadows and highlight. Notice how Roller made sure that the overall colors work together, like blue and pink or green and purple, which are common complementary colors. So play around, but keep color theory in mind so you don't go too wild. But a more common way of using curves is for adjusting the contrast of the image. A great example would be Willop, who loves using curves to make the highlights pop. Coloring with gradient map. In this time-lapse, Roller used gradient map to give the hair an iridescent sheen, a somewhat automatic way of adding details without needing to spend too much time or effort. To do this, just add gradient map, select one of the presets or make your own. Then set it to soft light and reduce opacity. This works by mapping each color of the gradient onto the values of the illustration, so the effectiveness of this method depends on the values of your image. Additionally, using soft lights and lowering opacity meant that the change in colors was subtle, just like what Roller did here. Levels, hue saturation, and LUTs. You probably already know levels and hue saturation. For LUTs, it's essentially just a filter. In this video, Roller applied a Kodak LUT on top of his illustration. Basically, this specific filter imitates the feeling of a Kodak film, which gave his illustration this cloudy, dreamy feeling. So feel free to experiment with this tool to see how it affects the mood of your illustration. Camera raw is heavily used in the field of photography, but overlooked by illustrators. Roller mentioned in this interview that he used camera raw to experiment with the mood and tone of his illustrations. With how easy and fast camera raw filter is, you can instantly change the whole mood of your illustrations in just seconds. Filter gallery. This is a function that may seem unusable at first glance.
I love Envato Elements because it has everything I need in one place. It has videos.
All right, you see. Okay, we're going to start with one main color, okay, and then we're going to go on to the secondary color, which is the color of the shadow. So it's going to be a little bit more muted, maybe a little bit warmer. Alpha lock that layer, then we're going to come down and apply that shadow color. Now, even though it is a very soft shadow, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to identify the transition between light and shadow. If you squint your eyes and take a step back, you can kind of determine down and up. So it's going to be a little bit more muted, maybe a little bit warmer. Alpha lock that layer, then we're going to come down and apply that shadow color. Now, even though it is a very soft shadow, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to identify the transition between light and shadow. If you squint your eyes and take a step back, you can kind of determine that the main...
I was watching some of my older videos, and some of you may know that I had made a video almost 5 years back about 4 different ways of blending colors in Photoshop, and a lot of people found that video very useful, especially beginner artists. And the reason I made the video was because a lot of people wanted it, and I still get comments on many of my newer videos asking me to make a video on color blending. So as I was watching the video, I realized it felt quite dated, and I felt the need to make an updated video on color blending. So this video is not gonna be all theory or technical like the last one. It's gonna be a lot more practical and problem and solution oriented. So what's the problem or the question? The problem is how to go from this to this. How to turn this basic color flats done like cel shading into a polished, smoothly blended and rendered output. That's the challenge. And to find out the solution, you need to watch the video till the end. So to start off, I'm going to be showing not one, but 4 different ways in which you can blend colors in Photoshop. So here's the first method, and it's manual color mixing. So the idea here is to pick color from the first side and paint it on the second side, then pick color from the second side and paint it on the first side, and then pick the new mid-tone color from the central area and then paint it on both sides. And then just keep repeating the process until the sharp border in the center completely disappears into a smooth transition from the first color to the second color. So that's the whole idea. So now let's try it. I'm gonna select the default soft round brush, keep the opacity of the brush low around 20%, keep both pen pressure options on, and then pick color from the left side, paint on the right side, pick from the right side, paint on the left side, and pick from the center, paint it on both sides, and just keep repeating the process until the fine border in between completely disappears into a smooth transition. And there it is, a beautiful and smooth blend of the 2 colors. And now let's proceed to the second method, and that's the smudge method. So for this, I'm going to be picking the smudge tool and then decide on the strength. If I keep the strength low, it's going to take me forever to blend the colors, and you're just not going to get a very smooth blend or a very gradual transition. And it's also going to be pretty slow and tough on your hardware. If I keep the strength pretty high, then it's going to be a very drastic amount of smudging, and you're not going to get that neatness out of it. So a good idea is to keep it somewhere in the middle, like I do, somewhere around 50 to 60%, and then just smudge it. And once the middle border gets blurry, you can increase the strength and finish off the rest to get a much smoother blend, to get a much smoother transition. And just remember to not make the strokes too long. If you drag them too much, then they're gonna take a while. So keep the strokes small, almost like painting dots with little drag. Now next we come to the third method, and that's the mixer brush technique. So for this, I'm going to be choosing the mixer brush tool, and notice the settings, and I'm going to be selecting the default soft round brush tool. If it looks too long, if you drag them too much, then they're going to take a while. So keep the brush technique. So for this, I'm going to be choosing the mixer brush tool, and notice the settings, and I'm going to be selecting the default soft round brush, keep the size relatively large. Now for the wetness, if I keep it too low, it's going to take a bit more of brushing to get the smoothness, and if I keep it too hard, again the blend is going to be a bit abrupt. So what I like to do is I keep around 20%, and notice how quickly this happens. And I personally prefer using this a lot because it gives you the fastest result and probably the cleanest result in a very short time. And one important thing to keep in mind about this method is that you have to make sure that all the colors are merged into one layer. If even one part is in a different layer, you're gonna get this weird distortions around the edge, and you're never gonna end up getting a smooth blend. So always make sure that the colors are merged into one layer and you're painting on that merged layer, and there's absolutely no transparency anywhere. Great, and now finally we come to the fourth method, and it's a little different from the others because what we'll be doing is, instead of just mixing colors, we'll start with just one color, then pick another color and just paint it on any of the sides using the soft round brush tool set at a low opacity. So that way we're gonna get a very smooth and gradual transition from one color to the other. You can also use the gradient tool for this, but so our goal right now is to use the blending techniques that we learned and apply on this to get a very smooth blend of colors, a properly rendered output. So I'm going to be duplicating all the layers and merge them into one so that we don't get any weird distortions while using the mixer brush tool. And the next part is pretty much simple. Just paint along the edges until the sharp edges completely blend into a very smooth and gradual transition. Same for the highlights, just like the shadows. And for complex forms like these, you might want to look at good references because the key to realism is a nice blend of soft and hard edges. If you blend everything, all the sharp edges into blurry smooth edges, then chances are that it's not going to look very realistic. So always keep in mind that form is very important. So I'm just blending the areas that don't have very sharp bends, and I'm keeping the brush size relatively small because if I go too big, I'm going to end up mixing a lot of things at the same time, which I don't want. I'm going to do it selectively. I want to tackle one area at a time to get the most neatness and have maximum control over what I'm blending. Great, so once I'm done with that, I'm going to take a new layer and I'm going to paint some brighter highlights in certain areas. So I'm going to pick a brighter shade of the current highlight, which is pretty much white, and I'm going to be painting these highlights in some of those areas that look almost like reflections. And then I'm going to be using the smudge tool to get that nice blend, and it goes from sharp to blurry to get the maximum realism. I can increase the brush size if I want a little more blend, and then I'm using the eraser to bring down the opacity of certain areas. And finally, I'm going to take another layer and choose, it's very important, and some of them are going to be a bit soft. Then for that, I'm going to take a new layer, and with the brush size set to very low and opacity high, I'm going to pick some of the highlight colors and paint it towards the shadow area, and then pick the shadow color and paint it, add a bit of depth to the veins to give them volume and some highlight as well. Some of the veins are going to be hard with hard edges, and some of them are going to be a bit soft. And this is completely optional. It has nothing to do with the blending tutorial, but again, our goal should always be to improve and go to the next level. I'm erasing some of the areas to make it a bit soft, some nice vascularity. So there we have it, guys. I hope this video was useful, and if you like my content, make sure to subscribe and click on the bell icon to get notified about my upcoming videos. So thanks for watching the video, and that's it for now. See you on the next one. Peace.
Lazada 66 Super Wow Sale. Jaminan harga terendah. Voucher bonus hingga 660.000. Jangan salah belanja. Belanja di Lazada 66 Sale aja.
Kok diusul? Agak lain memang.